Hello Fratcom, this is maxforti back at you with another good, bad, ugly, underrated, and overrated. This time we're going to cover the house of Serge Lutens, which happens to be one of my favorite houses of all time. So without any further ado, stay right there, it's coming up right now. Alright Fratcom, so let's get right into the house of Serge Lutens, and we're going to cover all of them like we always do, from left all the way to right over here, starting with Vetiver Oriental and finishing off with Gris Clair. Then I'm going to give you what I think that is the good, the bad, the ugly from the house, the most underrated and the most overrated in my opinion. Let's start with, as I always start, with the background of the company. So Serge Lutens is a multi-talented artist whose career encompasses fashion design, perfume design, hairstylist, photography, and filmmaking. So Serge Lutens, if you're out there, I just have to tip off my hat out to you and just say, man, you are a very talented human being, and I envy you. In 1967, Lutens was commissioned by Christian Dior to produce a line of cosmetics. Lutens worked professionally as a photographer in the 70s and directed 2 short films which were shown at the Cannes Film Festival in France. Japanese cosmetic company Shiseido hired Lutens to develop their image in 1980. The partnership with Shiseido was mutually successful and fruitful. Designed packaging and cosmetics, as well as photographing award-winning advertisements for the brand. Shiseido gave Lutens his start in the fragrance industry in 1982, when they commissioned a fragrance from him called Nombre Noir, which that fragrance itself has a great cult following, and it is arguably said to be, by many followers, one of the best fragrances ever created. I've never gotten my nose on that, so if anybody has a little decant or something out there, I would love to smell that. Lutens embarked on his own venture, Parfums Beaute Serge Lutens, in 2000. Lutens creates his perfumes in close collaboration with perfumer Christopher Chadrock. The brand emerged at a perfect time when the internet made the e-commerce and social networking available and allowed exclusive, unusual perfumes to be obtained and discussed, quote-unquote cult and niche fragrances, of which Serge Lutens fragrances are a perfect example of. And the house currently has 73 offerings in their ever-growing and amazing portfolio. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the offerings that I have of this amazing and so masterful house of Serge Lutens, which just happens to be one of my favorites of all time. So we're going to start with Vetiver Oriental. Okay, so starting with Vetiver Oriental, which is an Oriental woody fragrance. This is very woody, it's quite earthy, it has a beautiful note of cacao in there, which gives it a real nice twist to a vetiver, otherwise boring fragrance, making this a very alluring and very exquisite fragrance with a backbone of amber and some sweets. This is rather linear. What you get in the beginning is what you're going to get throughout the life of the fragrance, but I gotta tell you, this is amazing, amazing fragrance. Next up we have Serge. Now Serge needs no introduction. It's definitely a fragrance that is so well known by the fragrance community. It's probably everyone's favorite offering from this house. And what this fragrance is, it's quite another, again, Oriental spicy fragrance, very sweet, a bit balsamic, beautiful note of tobacco, a honeyed hay note in there, a little bit powdery as it dries down, and a very nice note of amber. Again, this one is also, Serge is also a linear, on the linear side of things. What you get in the beginning is what you're going to get throughout the life of the fragrance, but it's definitely a masterpiece of a fragrance. Next up we have Filet d'Anguille, which is definitely also one of my all-time favorites. And you can see from the bottle, it's one of probably, along with a couple other ones that has gotten the most use out of. I really love this fragrance in a colder time. I really reach out for it. So Filet d'Anguille is a Oriental woody fragrance, a beautiful woody aromatic, a bit balsamic, somewhat spicy, and very smoky. This fragrance here, you're gonna get some dried fruits, some pine needles, some spices, another beautiful note of vetiver here and some incense. Just a very, very sexy, mysterious, and intriguing fragrance. Filet d'Anguille, definitely one of the best from the house. Next to it is an very, I would say, criminally underrated and not really talked about, Shiipa Rouge, which to me is definitely a masterpiece, and I don't know why people, I don't know if it's discontinued and that's the reason why it doesn't get much talk, but it's definitely a fragrance deserving of attention for what you get out of that fragrance. So Shiipa Rouge is considered a Shiipa, obviously, and fruity. Again, this one you're going to get a beautiful note of honey in there, some beeswax, rather animalic, but not over the top. Pine needles are also present. You have honey and beeswax, as well as amber, patchouli, and vanilla, and some musk. This is a phenomenal, phenomenal offering from the house. Again, extremely underrated. Right next to it, we have La Fille de Berlin. That one over there is just a phenomenal combo of red wine and rose. Rather simple notes, you know, but very complex put together. I don't wear that one much, only in special occasions, because that fragrance is just that, extremely special. I actually find that fragrance very sexy, and I love to wear that for like Valentine's Day, you know, romantic settings. And you don't need much. That fragrance lasts quite a bit. You know, it's considered an Oriental floral. You know, again, you know, as far as notes are concerned, you're getting like a red wine feel, some roses, a bit of pepper in there that gives it just a right amount of spiciness to it. Great, great fragrance. Right next to it is another one that I wear the heck out of it when it comes to the fall and, you know, around the holidays. That one's Merciful Ton. Now, Merciful Ton is, I would say, an Oriental spicy fragrance. It is heavy in the amber, you know, nice spiciness to it. It's quite a bit linear. You have some real nice notes in here, some really creaminess from like a sandalwood. You have some, like, this is really resinous and very opulent. You're gonna have a ton of different resins in here, sandalwood, patchouli. Sorry, there's angelica in here, and you get a feeling of dried fruits as well. It's just a phenomenal fragrance, one that is really sexy and great to wear around the holidays. Right next to it, you have one that's very masculine. It's called Cèdre, which is really a beautiful take on cedar. I think pretty much all of the offerings here are very unisex. I would say Cèdre is probably one of the most masculines that I have here, but also can be worn by, you know, both men and women. That one over there is considered, again, another Oriental woody. It's warm, it's spicy. You have a beautiful note of tuberose in there, some white florals embellished by woods, amber, and a little bit of animalic. Great, great fragrance. The cinnamon in there is very, very beautiful, and there's some cloves in there. So the clove and the cinnamon, they kind of like, you know, mash in this beautiful way, giving this fragrance this amazing aromatic feel to it. Definitely a great fragrance, and I've wore a lot of it, as you can see from the bottle. Next to it is actually 5 o'clock au gingembre. That's like my third bottle. This is definitely one of my favorites from the house. I definitely wear a lot of that fragrance in the that one has Christmas all over. It's like, you know, think of ginger cookies, you know, gingerbread houses. That one's like, you know, Christmas in the bottle, if you will. You know, if people call, you know, Burberry London for man Christmas in the bottle, this is the niche version of Christmas in the bottle for man. You know, 5 o'clock au gingembre is just that. You know, the ginger note in here is beautifully made, just an exquisite fragrance, you know, with the spices, just unbelievable deliciousness. Great, great for the cold weather. The components of that fragrance are just so amazing. You know, we have some cocoa, we have some amber, some wood, some cinnamon, some ginger, I believe some tea in there as well. Just a great fragrance for the holidays, one of my favorites. Right next to it, there's one that's called Untitled Chapter. That one there is extremely underrated, just like Shiipa Rouge. It's one that just recently has gotten some recognition from the Fragcom, and rightfully so. Just an amazing fragrance, definitely great, deserving of a lot of attention. And if you haven't tried to get your noses in it, you're gonna love it. It's very inviting, very warm, definitely unisex, extremely cozy. Again, another Oriental fragrance. You have that spiciness, a little bit of cacao and rose combo in there, a bit powdery. You know, you have 3 elements here: sandalwood, cacao, and rose. That's Untitled Chapter. Nothing else to say. Great fragrance, masterpiece. Right next to it, you have Arabi, which again is one of my favorites. Great to wear in the fall and winter as well. Most of these fragrances, I mainly wear them in, you know, colder spring days to, you know, romantic settings in the summertime, and cooler weather, you know, fall and winter. That's what I think Serge Lutens is the best for. Serge Lutens Arabi, definitely one of my favorites. Great fragrance. Another Oriental offering with a woody backbone. This is fresh, it's spicy. This is spicy, it's sweet, it's balsamic, it's definitely warm, a little bit fruity. You have a beautiful note of fig in here with dried fruits, tonka bean, dates. There's some, citrus from like a nice tangerine or mandarin orange. Definitely creamy, very resinous. One of the best offerings from the house, for sure, Arabi. Right next to it is one that's been discontinued on this 50 ml bottle setting, and now it's offered in a 2.5 or 75 ml bell jar. That's Fumerie Turque. Now, Fumerie Turque is not for the faint of heart. It's definitely very smoky, very daring, if you will. The common nose or someone who's used to mostly universal appeal fragrances will not appreciate Fumerie Turque as much. But if you give it some time, the beginning could be a little off-putting. When this thing starts to develop within the 30-minute mark, the magic begins. I just love that fragrance. Definitely one of my favorites, one of the most artistic and daring fragrance I've ever come across. Definitely a masterpiece. I have a first impressions on that fragrance. If you're curious to know a little bit more in depth on that fragrance, take a look at it. Definitely love Fumerie Turque. It is sweet, there's tobacco in here, definitely smoky, there's honey, a little bit animalic. There's like a nice beautiful suede in here, some tonka, obviously some roses, tobacco, just a phenomenal fragrance through and through. Right next to it is one that's been discontinued, that's Borneo 1834. Now that fragrance resembles, if you want something to understand exactly what that smell is, that is very similar to Chanel's Coromandel, or Chanel Coromandel is very similar to Borneo 1834. But Borneo 1834 is that much more complex and unique. I absolutely love that. Again, another one that's a masterpiece from this house. This house is just so amazing. There's so many masterpieces. Hence why it's one of my favorite houses of all time. Borneo 1834 is definitely inviting. It's warm, it's sexy. There's a beautiful patchouli cacao combo in here. It's a bit earthy. The sweetness here is also present. There's some labdanum. It's just heavenly. It's heaven in a bottle. Right next to it, we have another one that's very sexy, Jeu de Peau. That one there, it's like, think of baked goods, think of a beautiful bakery with nice, sweet pastries. That's what you get with that fragrance. Just an amazing combo. There's some wheat in there. Just so well mashed. Again, another masterpiece from the house. Very sexy, very intriguing, very alluring, if you will. You have this milky wheat note in there. There's some licorice, some coconut, enveloped by some sandalwood, some amber. Think of pastries. Think of baked goods. Think of something that's sexy and very intriguing. That's what you get with Jeu de Peau. This is beautiful, beautiful fragrance. Now we're going to get to the two that I think are the most daring from the brand. The next one here is called Miel de Bois, another one that's been discontinued, and it's just art in a bottle. I think it's so artistic, extremely daring. Another one that's not for the faint of heart. But if you like fragrances that are daring and you're not afraid to push the envelope, Miel de Bois is definitely for you. That fragrance, again, is just woody with honey mashed with some florals, some woods. There's iris in here. And what you get is basically woods with honey with an animalic musk undertone. It's just unbelievable. Very sexy, very intriguing. Again, not for the faint of heart, but if you like daring fragrances, definitely try this one. Right next to it, we have Sarge Noir. Now, Sarge Noir is another one that's a little bit daring, I think. And by daring, I mean the beginning of this fragrance can be very, very off-putting. That one's very warm, it's very smoky, and there is a very strong note. It resembles of cumin or curry kind of spice. Think of like Middle Eastern cuisine. You're gonna get a blast of that in the beginning, but if you have some patience and you let the incense come through with the cinnamon and the cloves, and then the spiciness and the amber and the patchouli and the dry down, you get this like really beautiful dry down, but the beginning can be very, very challenging, if you will. Definitely love it. Masterpiece in the bottle. Great, great fragrance. And right next to it, we have one that I think it's very easy to wear. I think this one is the easiest to wear from all the ones that I have. It's called Grise Clair. Grise Clair is, I get a lot of lavender out of that fragrance. I love to wear that fragrance in the springtime. From all the offerings I have, it's just very easy to please. And again, Serge Lutens does not commonly have fragrances that are easy to wear or dumb reach. They're very artistic, they're very complex, very intense, deep, and Grise Clair is no difference, but it's easier to wear. That one's a woody floral musk. It's very aromatic. The florals are there. It's quite balsamic, a little bit fresh, and a little bit spicy. The lavender note is quite prominent. You have some incense, some tonka bean, some iris, and some amber, and even some woods in the background. It's just a beautiful fragrance, but it's easier to wear. Definitely very unisex, leaning more in the feminine side maybe. All 16 offerings that I have from this house, I absolutely love and adore. These are the fragrances that I currently own from the house. I've had other ones that I gave it away or what have you. These are very near and dear to my heart, and I'm so glad to have these in my collection. Now, let's jump right into the good, the bad, the ugly, the underrated, and the overrated from this house. Let's get right into it, okay? So let's do it. I think the good from the house has to go to Shahgi. And the reason why I say that is because obviously, you know, it is the most known from the fragrance house. It's the one that's the most talked about. And it is for a reason. It is just done to perfection. It is a beautiful fragrance. The honeyed hay here, the tobacco are so exquisitely beautiful, very enticing, very inviting, very warm and cozy. I have to give the good to Shahgi. Very hard for me to pick a bad, but since I have to pick a bad one, I'm gonna go with Miel de Bois. And the only reason why I'm doing this, it's not because it is a bad fragrance, but I think it's the most challenging from what I have, and what I have smelled so far from this house. The combination of the flowers here with the woods and the honey and the beeswax, it's just, it could be very pungent and very off-putting. If you don't like challenging and daring fragrances, this will make you uncomfortable. It is very, very daring. So I had to pick one, not an easy task. That's why I picked Miel de Bois as the bad. But not that it's a bad fragrance, it's actually very artistic, very creative, and an amazing fragrance at that. Again, guys, very hard for me to pick an ugly fragrance from this house, but I have to pick one. So I'm gonna go with Sarge Noir. The only reason is because, again, the initial blast, you're gonna get some spices here that are very reminiscent to like Indian cooking or Middle Eastern cooking with heavy cumin and heavy curry, if you will, and that can be quite off-putting and very harsh, you know, in the beginning. But again, if you have some patience, after the first half an hour to 40 minutes, the magic will begin and the fragrance will shine. But if I have to pick an ugly, I would go with Serge Noir. Definitely, again, just like Miel de Bois, hard to wear, you know, so that's why I'm saying that this is the ugly of all the ones that I have, because I had to pick one, but I love them all. The most underrated from this house has to go to Shiipa Rouge. I was so glad to find this fragrance. I didn't hear much about it. Again, this is a Shiipa with fruity undertones. You have the pine needles in here. You have honey wax. You have beeswax. You have honey, amber, patchouli, musk, vanilla. It is just beautiful. Even gives you like a cocoa vibe in a dry down. Phenomenal fragrance, sexiness in a bottle, mysterious, intriguing, inviting, warm, cozy. I don't have enough adjectives to give this fragrance. That's how good it is. Definitely the most underrated from this house. I hope this is not discontinued, but if you can find a bottle of this, jump on it. You're not going to regret it. And last but not least, we're going with the overrated from the house. Again, very hard to pick. I was going to give this house no overrated fragrances, but since I had to pick one, it was either giving Shahgi two categories, you know, the good and the most overrated, which really technically it is. But, you know, 5 o'clock Au Gingembre, a lot of people think that this is very overrated. And there are a lot of different spicy tea, gingery fragrances in the market that I guess you could say this is overrated. I really love this fragrance, but since we had to pick one from the house that's overrated, I'm going to go with 5 o'clock Au Gingembre. You know, it is great though. Again, very hard to pick a bad or an overrated from this fragrance. I absolutely love this fragrance to death. So that was it, Fratcom. I hope you appreciated the take on the good, the bad, the ugly, the underrated and overrated from the house of Serge Lutens. It was not an easy task, especially to have to pick an ugly or a bad from this house that I love so much. Please drop your comments down below if you have any fragrances that I haven't mentioned in this video that you think I should check out. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please drop your comments down below. Hit that like button, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe for a lot more. This was Max Forte. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.